to speak on behalf of a collaborative project that I've been doing with several faculty members at Oregon State University, where I've been for the last 2 years. And I probably don't need to introduce an herbaria to this group, but for the uninitiated, an herbarium is a collection of pressed, dried plant specimens that are identified and arranged in a systematic way and are available for all kinds of research use. And the specimen is a combination of the physical plant itself, but also the label data that accompanies this. And the label data provides so much additional information that can be used to answer all kinds of questions related to biodiversity and evolution and species interactions and distribution. And this is true of herbaria. This is also true of all natural history collections. And these specimens in these collections are being used now in ways that were never imagined in the past. And DNA extraction and genomics among them. So Oregon State University not only has an herbarium that's amazing, it also has a world-class arthropod collection, a bird and mammal collection, a mineralogical collection, and even an ice core and quaternary geochemistry lab, where they're actually taking sediment and ice core samples to analyze past climate and model future predictions. So we have a wealth on our campus. However, our campus is physically large, and all of these collections are scattered around the campus. And because of that, because there is not a museum that pulls these together, many of our students, many of our faculty, and the community in which we're embedded are unaware of the collections and how they can use and benefit from these collections. So me and Peter Konstantinidis, curator of vertebrates, and Chris Marshall, curator of arthropods, have got together and we were brainstorming how can we increase the visibility of these resources and take advantage of being in a university setting where we have access to the most phenomenal resource available, hundreds and hundreds of students. So we thought a coffee table book, okay? But we're busy. We don't have time to generate fabulous content for a coffee table book. And while we have a diverse skill set, we also lack some of the skills for that. So we reached out to other collaborators. So here is Ehren Pflugfelder, who teaches a science writing course. And he was interested in creating a genuine assignment for his students for that course. And as part of his fall term course, 25% of their grade was going to be to generate content, stories about the collections for this coffee table book. Another collaborator, Baden, is in the photography department, and he teaches a photography/book design course. And he was looking for a project where his students could photograph interesting things and design a book that they would then prepare and hand sew and hand produce these books. And so it was a match made in heaven, and he developed his entire course around this project. You can say an advanced publication where students will focus on photography, book design, book production with the goal of creating a professional book for the natural history collections. So we had a need as curators. The writing instructor had a need for a legitimate, authentic assignment for his students, and the photography instructor had a need. And I think that the take-home message I'm going to put out there right now is these collaborations, it's very important to identify needs and make sure that there is a balancing of needs among all the diverse participants. So this is how we have worked on this. We started off with the curators identifying the content that would be suitable for the writing class. And then in fall term quarter, the students generated the content, winter, students were visiting the collections and photographing items and the physical facilities themselves. And they also designed the book and produced the book. I have their prototypes here for you during the break. You can look at those. And then right now we are actually going through revisions because our goal is to actually produce these books and make them available for our community. We knew what we didn't want. We did not want a history book. We did not want a dry historical timeline of the collections, even though all of our collections have a very long, rich history, as you can tell from this early picture of the herbarium. So we thought what we wanted to emphasize were themes that were timeless. And the themes, this is an actual snapshot of a whiteboard meeting that we had. And the ones that we decided were discovery. How are these collections linked to discovery? And not just scientific discoveries, but the discoveries that all of us have when we notice something for the first time ourselves. That eureka moment that we all have when we're in the lab, but also that eureka moment that a student has when she encounters a really cool plant for the first time. It doesn't matter that other people have encountered this plant before. It's new for her. So that was one theme. The theme of education, how it's used not only in classes, but in a larger community. Time was the one that students struggle with most, because in the collections, time is like a character that moves through a play. It interacts with the collections in so many different ways. A collection is made in that moment of time, but the person who is collecting a plant and making a specimen, they're thinking about that moment, but they're also thinking about the person 100, 200 years from now who will be using that collection. And everything that we do in the natural history world in these collections is we're trying to preserve the past in the present so it's available for the future. So that was interesting. And then connections. This has our connections with society, societal values, art, and then the future. And then the objects themselves, Wunderkammer, cabinets of curiosity. So it started with, we visited the classroom of the writing students to introduce them to the project. We also led tours for both of the classes, so they knew what the collections were about. And then, I know you can't read it, but we made a list of all of the collections on campus and their contact information. And the writing students could identify which collections they were interested in and would reach out to. It was important to us that all of our collections were represented. Then we divided the section according to discovery, time, cabinets of curiosity, and students would identify which theme they were interested in. So now you can see it's kind of like a 4x5 matrix or something where we had students connecting one of the theme with a collection. And they wrote up their essay, and then we came together to come up with a bunch of topics, items, concepts to be photographed. And then we had several weeks of photography students visiting all the collections and even setting up studio space and photographing these. And most of my presentation are their images. So they did a great job of getting these ideas of what these spaces are like, and documenting how people use and interact with the materials, how they preserve them, curate them, and how we use them in classrooms and workshops, and connections with art. It really captured the life in these collections of pressed, dried, pickled, pinned objects. And they also saw the beauty in the objects themselves. We usually interact with these from a science standpoint. And so sometimes we miss the beauty of these objects. Same object, two different students, completely different. So after the students did this, their next task was to combine the text and the images. So all of the art students had access to thousands of images that they all piled together. They had access to the same body of text. And we curators wrote the major text, the ideas of the themes, and the students designed those and put those together into book format. They worked in 4 teams of 3 students. I've got 3 of their examples here. And then they had to make 5 copies of their books. So I've got up here, these were the curator copies. And then the students took a lot of ownership of these. They referred to them as their babies, okay? And at the end, we had all these copies of these lovely books. And the students actually formed a panel, and they had to present their book concepts to us so we could choose the winning book, the one that we want to put forward and actually present. Okay, so I gotta do this fast. So they gave us this presentation. We were amazed at the work. I'm gonna look at the time because I want you to hear what the students have to say about this whole process. The winning students have had to do additional work, designing how they were going to do it. We've taken the proposal to the press. We're going to have to self-publish this, but we think it's all
What
worthwhile.
excites me about this project is the idea of working with departments that you don't normally get to interact with. I don't have a lot of experience with like the science departments and seeing how to interact with their subject was really cool.
I think what's really cool about a project like this is that it allows the science department and the art department to really come together and work as a team. I think that there needs to be more representation of art and how it can influence science and vice versa. And so I think classes like this really allow for things like that to happen.
I really enjoyed being able to honestly just photograph really interesting subjects. That's not something I'm used to doing. You go in and you shoot a bunch of dead fish. That's not something that you normally get to do. And to see parts of Oregon State that I didn't know existed and see collections that we had. So that was pretty exciting.
I see what I did in this course benefiting me in the future because the pieces of writing for my 2 chapters have been some of the best writing I've ever done. Been a really interesting memoir, nonfiction blend that personally worked really well for me. And those are things I'm going to be putting on my portfolio of writings.
What excites me about this project is,
Sorry, I gotta get out of this. And, whoops, there's a lot of things that I would encourage you to think about doing. Computer classes, web design classes, theater. The sky is the limit. The thing that I would caution though is to make sure it's all about balance. Because if you're not making sure that all the partners in the collaboration are having their needs met, it won't work. So it has to be a true collaboration. All right, and I have books up here. So during the break, please come see me.